guys, it is I, Otakushinsaku, back again for another reaction. This time on the video, Who is Worthy of Being Grand Saber? A Fake Grand Order Theory by the Anime Void. I just wanted to watch this because this is also something that I've been wondering about for a long time. We've gotten grands for other classes, but obviously one of the bigger classes we want to see is Grand Saber. Who is Grand Saber? The franchise keeps teasing us, but like, who is Grand Saber? Uh, I have theories of who could possibly be in the running up. Like, obviously, number one, a version of King Arthur. That is definitely in the running. A version of King Arthur could definitely be Grand Saber. Uh, But another one that could be Grand Saber, I guess, if you like, depending on how they would want to tell it, like you could go with the first. You can go with the first Emperor of Rome. Like he would be a really great pick. So you can go with the first Emperor of Rome because of all the campaigns he won, including the fact that he won so many war campaigns as not just as a young man, but also, again, we're talking about a guy who was not even blood related but adopted by Julius Caesar, and was such an amazing person that Julius Caesar himself was like, I don't give a fuck that you're not of my blood. Like, I name you as my successor. Like, so yeah. I would again. So he could be definitely a great pick for Grand Saber, especially in the fact that we haven't got him, which is weird. We've gotten a lot of Roman characters, but we don't have literally the first Emperor of Rome and the guy that literally has an entire cult to this day dedicated to the guy. Like, so it's weird, really. It's weird that of all the Roman characters that we have, I mean, for fuck's sake, we have Lucius Longinus, but we don't have literally the first Emperor of Rome. Are you kidding me? The fuck.
Grand Servants, the pinnacle of heroic spirits, those who are summoned forth to combat the beasts of humanity. Several may qualify, but only one can truly hold the title of each class at a time. Hello everyone and welcome to the Anime Void. I'm Brian, your host, and today we will be discussing Grand Servants and who I believe should be Grand Saber. And before we get into it, as of writing this script, I know that Grand Berserker hasn't been revealed yet either. But they may be by the time that I get around to uploading this, and if they don't, I personally do not care. Because just what does Grand Berserker even mean? That you're just the most insane? Is it going to be the Joker? We live in a society, master. But with that in mind, let's define.
Obviously, just due to trademark and copyright, they can never do it. But just as a total laugh, that would be fucking hilarious. That would be fucking hilarious. That Grand Berserker is the Joker. That'd be fucking. That would make my day.
Each of the grand qualifications that we know of or can speculate on, leading up to talking about possible Grand Saber candidates. For broad qualifications, these heroic spirits must be some of the best in their respective classes. And furthermore, they cannot be divine spirits. Some classes do have further restrictions on top of this, only one of which is confirmed at this time. Starting with Grand Assassin, this is the only class that has just one qualifying heroic spirit, that being the first Hassan-i Saba, the Old Man of the Mountain, being one with the concept of death itself, stands unrivaled. The Assassin of assassins. With that, we can speculate that one must walk in the valley of the shadow of death in order to get this qualification, thus meaning that Gramps is the only one to truly do that. Or it could just be his unparalleled strength within the class alone that grants him this position. Grandcaster is the class that we not only have the most confirmed candidates, but is also the one with a defined extra qualification. In order to qualify for the rank of Grandcaster, a heroic spirit must have some form of extremely powerful, likely nearly perfect, clairvoyance. The qualifying candidates revealed so far are Solomon, Merlin, and Caster Gilgamesh. I will not be counting Tai Gong Wong for Grand anything because he is kind of sus. For the position of Grand Rider, it is currently held by Noah, which I feel is largely expected. Not so much the needlessly fused with Nemo part, but in general. Having command of pretty much every corporeal mount conceivable, commanding the Ark, and having enough divine blessings that I would not be surprised if he could command phantasmals as well. I would say he more than qualifies for being one of the more powerful riders. Hell, being able to command every type of mount might even be a specific qualification. And now we reach the Grand Knight classes, and it's here that everything kind of goes out the window. Between Orion and Romulus Quirinius, there seems to be no distinct qualifier other than they are strong as hell. Though, Romulus Quirinius does have a distinction of being an exception to the rule of divine spirits, given his intrinsic connection with mankind. So, while Grand Calvary seems to either hint or directly spell out special attributes a candidate must have, the Grand Knights seem to only qualify by strength and strength alone. This is rather boring in the grand scheme of things. However, with this in mind, and looking over the Sabers, it does narrow it down quite a bit. And before we jump into that, real quick, you can become a Grand Subscriber class just by hitting the subscribe button and clicking the like button too if you're enjoying the video. Now, let's get into the Grand Saber candidates. First, we have Attila the Hun, aka Altera, aka the King of Combat. She is destruction incarnate, and in her origins, she is able to best the like of Mars as the White Titan. Of course, in her current form, with the spirit origin that she has, she can't access her full capabilities without damaging herself. However, an upgraded form is not out of the question, as demonstrated with both Orion and Romulus. So it is possible for her to obtain a Grand Spirit origin and be closer to being Sephar, unleashing her full power. This would also be an interesting route to go if they decide to make the White Titan a beast class, pairing her against Grand Saber Attila the Hun. Next, we have the two most obvious choices, Arturia and Arthur. But I'm mostly going to be talking about Arturia because if King Arthur is going to be a Grand Saber, it has to be her. I like Arthur well enough. He's my boy. But if he ends up being Grand Saber, I will vomit blood.
Why? Clearly it's just due to the fact that this person is a huge fanboy for Arturia, but as a fan of King Arthur broadly, I disagree. I would be more than happy if any version of King Arthur is Grand Saber, right? So if a version of Arturia is Grand Saber, fantastic. If Grand Saber is Arthur, also fantastic. Because unlike this video creator, I'm just a fan of King Arthur in Arthurian mythos broadly. So I don't care what the genitals are when it comes to Grand Saber King Arthur. I'm just happy that a King Arthur is Grand Saber, and that would make me happy. Because, yeah. Or, in fact, or hypothetically, if Grand Saber was one of King Arthur's knights, which technically could happen because, as we found out in our previous reaction, Hercules is a Hercules is a honorary member of the Knights of the Round Table because of King Arthur's huge fanboyism for Hercules. So uh, that's fantastic, right? So again, and also a lot of people also the Round Table had a lot of knights. Throughout King Arthur's life, he knighted a lot of people, like a fuck ton amount of people. So it's not out of the question that King Arthur or a knight of King Arthur could be Grand Saber.
Arthur is canonically said to be the strongest saber. Sure, this may have been retconned at this point, or maybe it hasn't, but still, it would remain that Artoria is very close to the top, so Grand Candidate is very obvious. But my extreme feelings for it having to be her is because of how completely shafted the OG Saber has been. Now, I know what you're thinking. You may hear that and think I am crazy, that Artoria still gets lots of attention. She shows up a bunch. And while, yes, to a certain extent, the idea of Artoria Pendragon is overdone to death, but I really want you to think about the character herself. How often do you see the original Artoria? Not an altar, not from the servant verse, not whatever the hell Castoria is, and not one of the ones with award-winning coconuts. Just our normal, old school.
A lot. Like again, clearly this person doesn't play Fate Grand Order, so there's that. Also the extra games because in the extra games you can run into her, right? In the extra games for the PlayStation 3, I believe, you can run into her. So yeah, while it may not seem like a lot, let's put it this way. Let's just definitively put it this way. In the entire Fate franchise, you run into Artoria a fuck ton more than you run into Fate Arthur prototype, right? So this whole idea of Artoria not getting enough love is complete bullshit. Because you want to talk about enough love, our boy prototype is not getting enough love. Dude, Artoria is basically the mascot of the entire franchise. Oh, Artoria's not getting enough love. Who is the Saber class servant that you see on literally the cover image for Fate Grand Order? And you're gonna fucking sit here and look me dead in the eye and tell me that Artoria is not getting enough love. Are you shitting me? This would be like a Nintendo fan saying, but Mario's not getting enough love. Really? Really? Basically, the mascot of the entire franchise is not getting enough love. Are you shitting me?
Flat-chested king of knights. Did you know that she only has 2 voice lines related to other characters? And those 2 characters are Emiya Archer and Gilgamesh. 7 years of this game, and she doesn't have a single voice line for a Rin face, a Sakura face, a different Saber face, one of her clones, an Ilia face, Emiya Assassin, Irisfiel, any of her knights, or even Muramasa. Anytime that something happens with the round table in an interlude, it's almost never her anymore. It's the Lancer version. The underutilization of the original Artoria is downright criminal. And yes, you can say the same about other servants, but we are focusing on Artoria right now. And you may be one of those people who say, oh, but her story's over. She doesn't need any more development. And to that, I say you are a shill and you speak nonsense. We did see development and a full story arc made in Fate Stay Night stories. But how does that development change the way she interacts with characters from her past? How does this finished story Artoria interact with new situations? There is no such thing.
Well, first of all, you're showing a version of her in Avalon. So, that specific version of Artoria can not interact with the characters of her past. Why? Because she cannot be summoned. Once she enters Avalon, that's it. It is a one-way trip. She cannot be summoned. No amount of Holy Grail bullshit can pull her out of Avalon. She's there permanently. So, with that being the case, well, why doesn't she mention anything about her past? Because she's in Avalon. And the versions of Artoria that we see are basically hand-wavy bullshit versions of her. But the Artoria specifically from Fate Stay Night, if we are talking about the Artoria at the end of the Fate route from Fate Stay Night, she cannot be summoned. Period. Based on the rules we are told, she cannot be summoned because she is in Avalon, and therefore, therefore she is inaccessible to anything. She is permanently there, and she will never not be there. That is her afterlife. And so, with that being the case, it's why, for example, the Fate Route version of Shiro, who loved Artoria and wanted to get back to her, had to bend and break the entire universe basically cleanly in half in order to get into Avalon so he could see her, right? That extra ending we get in the Fate Stay Night story where Shiro goes to Avalon to meet back up with Artoria shows hints at the fact of what he had to do. Because of the fact that, well, wouldn't Shiro just know that he could just make another, he doesn't have another Holy Grail War type situation and then just resummon her? No, clearly he can't do that. So, the only thing he can do is do everything possible to get into Avalon, because only by getting into Avalon does he get back to his Artoria. Because now that she's in Avalon, she cannot be accessed. Period. If Shiro knows this, then I think it should be fucking obvious to everyone. It's yeah, look, again, because as a human being, we want to take the most efficient and easiest route. So that raises the question: wouldn't the most efficient, easiest route for a Shiro who loves Artoria just resummon her? Well, clearly he didn't do that, because clearly that option is not on the table. Once she's in Avalon, you can't resummon her. She is no longer part of the Throne of Heroes. She is completely inaccessible to even Aelia, the subconscious will of humanity. So, even using the power of Aelia and the Holy Grail and everything to access the Throne of Heroes, that's still not enough. Literally, real magic, actual magic, not magecraft, actual magic to access the Throne of Heroes is still not enough to access a King Arthur that has successfully made it into Avalon. Once they get into Avalon, that's it. Period. End of discussion. They are not a part of the Throne of Heroes. Game over.
as a finished story. Even when something ends from our perspective, it still continues on from the perspective of the characters within the story. You think the kid you knew in high school and haven't seen since magically remains stagnant because you no longer perceive them? That is ridiculous. And just because we are dealing with a fictional character doesn't mean the same logic can't apply. There is always an after to happily ever after. And I'm not even saying that Artoria needs to be the constant center of attention. I don't want that. Hell, I'm just going to be satisfied if we get better room dialogues. And also, give her her suit already. What is wrong with you people? Still, the fact remains that Artoria is one of the most powerful Sabers, story-wise, and is therefore more than qualified to be Grand Saber. She could even be summoned wielding Avalon as well for extra power. However, even with all that said, there is one heroic spirit that qualifies not only in terms of strength, but also narrative viability. And that is the Wandering Swordswoman, Miyamoto Musashi.
Yeah, Miyamoto Musashi. I was gonna say the person who could definitely be in the running, because I just thought about them, is Heracles. Heracles could definitely be summoned as Grand Saber. Just putting that out there. And honestly, in the back of my mind, I was thinking that he might say Heracles, but Miyamoto Musashi, another pick that I would not be upset with.
And here's a big old spoiler warning if you have not finished the Olympus Lost Belt, because I am talking about its ending. This is your only chance. Play the story, come back when you're done. Now, I doubt there is any debate on Musashi's power, as she was able to cut through the void, a truly spectacular feat. But that moment is also why she may be a questionable choice. She's not from proper human history. She's from a lost belt, so when she was incinerated, we are unable to restore her, as her spirit origin isn't in the Throne of Heroes, which is why she shows up as Data Lost when you look her up. This is verifiable bullshit. Even if we are to move forward with the idea that the Lost Belt servants that we already summon aren't canonically their Lost Belt counterparts, or are just non-canonical summons in general, we still have the precedent of a servant's spirit origin that was never in the Throne of Heroes, ending up there by virtue of being recognized by Ritsuka Fujimaru, or their deeds being recognized by the world. In fact, we have two examples, those being Jeanne d'Arc Alter and Sir Bedivere. Jolter, by all rights of the narrative, shouldn't exist, as she is an impossibility only brought into existence by Gilles de Rais using the Holy Grail. Jeanne d'Arc was too inhumanly pure for such an aspect of herself to exist. She was meant to vanish and completely disappear, but didn't because of Ritsuka Fujimaru. And also, a similar thing sort of happened with Ku Alter. He was made in a similar way to Jalter, but they never really explained how he was still able to be summoned again. And for Bedivere, for whatever reason, he wasn't in the Throne of Heroes apparently, but the version of him from the Camelot Singularity was brought there after his deeds in combating the Lion King and aiding in the ending of the incineration of human history. Miyamoto Musashi checks both those boxes, being a heroic spirit that should be impossible and is recognized by Ritsuka Fujimaru, and having been crucial in the efforts in helping to restore proper human history. The world is more than likely to recognize her and bring her into the Throne of Heroes, and with her power, she is a strong candidate for Grand Saber. Plus, from a narrative perspective, it would be amazingly satisfying to see her again, coming in as a grand servant to whoop some ass. While I would like Artoria to get the role, and Altera could have good potential depending on what they do with the beast she summoned to fight, I do think Miyamoto Musashi is the most likely to.
So basically, I would agree with him. In my eyes, there are 4 candidates that could be Grand Saber. I'll say 5. First Emperor of Rome. First Emperor of Rome, Heracles, proper Heracles, by the way, or so in this case, Alcides, wielding his sword that Castoria yanked, by the way, and was like, "This is my sword now." Yeah, bullshit. No, that's Heracles' sword. So there's the first Emperor of Rome, Heracles, some version of King Arthur, so Artoria, Proto Arthur, whatever, some version of King Arthur. Weirdly enough, I'll just put this out there just because it could happen, because of the fact that through his bullshit he pretty much because of his bullshit he could Gilgamesh, a version of Gilgamesh. Because again, we're talking about like branching timelines and everything, and also the Lost Belts. Because keep in mind, even Lost Belt servants can count for this. Because again, the shenanigans of Figure and Order. So we're talking about the unlimited multiverse and even the Lost Belts. Given literally the mathematical property of infinity, it could stand to reason that there could be a version of Gilgamesh that focused on actually turning with his swords and not being just I literally just shoot my stuff at a gate of Babylon or whatever. Like there actually could be a Gilgamesh who was like, you know what, I want to get really really good with the sword, and also of course Grand Saber could also just literally just be like, yeah, I have Ea, fuck you. But so a version of Gilgamesh would not be surprised. So there's that. So let's see. First Emperor Rome, a version of King Arthur, Heracles, Gilgamesh, and Miyamoto Musashi. Yeah. I can easily see that. I can definitely easily see that. So those would be my top 5 picks. Not in any specific order, by the way. Don't think that was in any specific order. That was just off the top of my head. But the top 5 picks of what I just said, that's who I would say is definitely in my mind in the running for Grand Saber. I would be heavily leaning towards Heracles because, again, he wants to talk about people that haven't been given a lot of screen time. Heracles as well, because the one that we get the most is Berserker Heracles, especially in terms of animation. Alcides we see we see in a Fate story, but again, he's not shown all that much. I would love to see Heracles, Hercules, Alcides, whatever, a version of him with his sword that only he could wield. And he was such a strong swordsman that even Zeus respected him for his swordsmanship. And Zeus literally said when the big Titan apocalypse was happening, Zeus was like, "I want to have a one-on-one with this guy. Heracles, you fight off all the rest." So while Zeus was having a one-on-one fight with a super powerful being, for sure, Heracles was one-man armying an entire army. Like, Heracles is beyond broken. Plus, we're talking about the guy who, especially when we're talking about the Titans, we're talking about the guy who gave Atlas a break. So for anyone who watched that Death Battle episode with Heracles, they would remember that Heracles literally has infinite strength because of the fact that he literally held up the universe just to give Atlas a break. So in terms of pure strength, we're talking about the guy. We're talking about the guy that after Heracles died was given the title by the gods themselves of God of Strength. So if the Saber class has anything to do with strength, Heracles has his own sword that is known as his sword, a sword so tied to him that even Merlin told King Arthur, you got to put Heracles' sword down, no matter how much you like it, because you're never going to be as good with that sword as Heracles was. So there's that, right? So Heracles has his own version of Excalibur that only he could wield at its top performance, as well as the fact that he is, again, God of Strength. Which, but divinity, you can't be a divine spirit if you're, if you're grand. Again, he was given the God of Strength after his death. Meaning, all that Tide Moon has to do is say that Grand Saber is Heracles during that battle when he was wielding his sword, against the Titans and shit. So during that battle, that's when you could summon Grand Saber and Heracles, and therefore meet all the criteria, because again, it wasn't until Heracles died that he was posthumously given the title of God of Strength. He was definitely not a god and not recognized as one when he was alive. Therefore, if you summon any version of Heracles from when he was alive, he would not have divinity, or at the very least have very low ranks of divinity. Or at least low ranks of divinity enough to meet the qualifications for Grand. So that's why, for me, if there is a number one pick, basically it's like a massive tie between King Arthur and Heracles. And speaking honestly, I prefer Heracles to be Grand Saber, because I would love to see Grand Saber Heracles with his sword kicking everyone's ass. Literally everyone's ass. And showing what it means to be a guy who the gods, after he dies, goes, that's a god of strength. That bitch is strong. That bitch was strong. When you are so strong that even Zeus is just like, that bitch was strong. Like, you're strong. Like, even when Zeus gives it up to you, it's like, okay, boy, you're fucking strong. Like, something's up. But in either case, I am Otakushinsaku. Thank you guys for watching another video reaction. I hope to see you guys next time. Blah, 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 blah. Bye!